Hey everyone, this video is going to be a campaign diary of session 22 and 23 of our Dungeons & Dragons campaign. So when we last left off, they had just played a bunch of carnival games and went to meet the fortune teller. So then after they met the fortune teller, they decided that they wanted to go speak with the Lady of Masks, who was the lady that Droll sent them to meet. So they went and they sought out her camp in Latende district, which is the district all with tents and very carnival-y with fabric and old English cottages. And they went out to the outskirts of town and they found like a caravan group who was packing to leave with tents in front. And they spoke to a tabaxi who had like polka dots of like different colors all on her fur and asked that they were looking to speak with the Lady of Masks, and they had to wait about 20 minutes, but then they were given access to the Lady of Masks. And when they saw her, she was a very fair, white-haired, blue tiefling who was very pretty and wearing like a masquerade mask that covered like her eyes and to her nose. As they were trying to go in and meet with her, the tabaxi was asking like, "Oh, can you tell me like who sent you so I can like tell the Lady of Masks," maybe not like giving the name. So they basically mentioned Droll's name without mentioning Droll's name. They weren't very subtle at first, but when they went inside, like they saw like how clever the Lady of Masks was when she's like, "Oh, the carrier of dragons," because Droll is known as the dragon staff because the staff has like a red crystal ball on top and then it has a dragon on kind of perching on top of it. So she then asked like why they're here, and they mentioned that they're here to break the chain, and she's like, "Yes, the chain needs to be broken. It is anchored by an unstable point. That is something that I would like to happen as well. However, that's not my main concern. My main concern is basically Ragnar from the south, as he poses a bigger threat, and we're trying to understand like the extent of who he is and what his powers are, because he's seemingly invincible as he claims." Then she says, "If you want the information that I have on the chain of Orokef and their 4 lieutenants, which is very vast, I'm going to need something in return, like basically proof, number one, that I can trust you with this information and that you're capable enough to actually do it, and number two, like I need some like quid pro quo, like you do something for me in exchange for what I'm going to give you." They didn't seem too happy about it since they dealt a lot with that in the Fey realm, but I think the problem was I couldn't come up with something better. I think my creativity was lacking in that department with having a good reason for her to give them the information. I could have potentially maybe given it to them first, but it's possible they could have just not done the mission that I had her give to them, which was she wanted them to retrieve the full Black Iron Pact written by Ragnar, and it's like an enchanted scroll, so it can't be altered, and those who see it don't get a copy of it. So she says that the window of opportunity to retrieve this scroll comes in very short windows. There is a lesser noble house called House Cleverly who will have this scroll the night that there is supposed to be a masquerade/ball in their home. So the task is for the heroes to retrieve the scroll and bring it back to her. And that was the discussion between them. So they accepted, and she gave them like a sleeve for the scroll to go into so they could then keep it magically protected and it could be tracked or traced. So the players were thinking, "Oh, we can just go steal this now," but little do they know it's not there, and it will not be there until like a day before, and then it's going to leave like the morning after. Like it fluctuates who has it, and she doesn't know that information. She just knows that it will be there on the night for some reason, and then it will be gone. So they have this window basically on the masquerade to steal it. And there's a couple different reasons why I decided to have a masquerade ball. Number one, I wanted them to have to mingle with higher up nobles in the city, as well as it gives me a chance to show off the bad guys without them being able to attack them, since it's in like a big public setting and they're very safe around a bunch of allies. And number three, the reason why they voted for this campaign was they wanted to do heists. So I wanted to make sure that, the bulk of this arc, so to speak, had heists in it. So that was important for me to do. So that's the reason why I did that. And so after they left the Lady of Masks, they went back to go to the Fey Forge, and they were going to meet up with their goblin friend, Kaboom. But he wasn't there because it kind of took a little bit longer to meet with her than expected. So they went to the Fey Forge, and they met Julia, the tiefling. And then I wanted to make her kind of like bigger bones, just because tieflings are known for being like skinny and elegant. And I wanted her to be like gritty and rough and like strong. So that was the reason for having her be that. And she has a familiar. I had made some pets for like the different owners and shop owners in this city because it is like close to a magical city. So they have influence that kind of migrate from there. And the one that she has is called a Biote. I don't remember which book I got it from, but it's from a book that I have. And it's like an aberration mind spirit thing that is has an eye and 2 teeth that stick out, and it has like a tail and it floats. I made it so it was like incorporeal, like half and half, and that it was like intelligence brought into substance. That's kind of how I thought of it. And there's a book I read where they have a character named Dross, and that's kind of where I got my inspiration. Kind of Dross mixed with the robot from Portal, where it kind of has that witty personality. So that was really fun for me to interact with the characters. That instantly became their favorite NPC. He had a lot of sass. He was very charming. He was funny, and he had a lot of good information. And the players bought a lot of gear from Echo was the name of the biote, and Julia. So that was a success. And then after they went to a store that I named the Apothecary, which is like the magic store. They have herbs and potions as well. It's like the major magic store in the city. And the owner is a turtle, which I stole the personality of the turtle from Sid the Sloth. So it's like this. So that was really hard for me to do. That pronunciation is very difficult. It was very difficult for me. It was easy when I was just messing around, but having a full-on conversation, trying to stick with that, like your mouth gets really tired. So kudos to the actor who plays Sid, but that was fun as well. They didn't seem like to enjoy it as much, and there was kind of some shortcomings. Like they wanted to know what was in the store, and since the store was so massive, I was just like, well, what do you want? And I'll tell you if they have it. And they kind of said, well, in this case, we would like to have some magic items like already prepped, like maybe like 4 or 5 or 7 or whatever. So when they came in, they said, oh, what do I see? I can like give the highlights, and then if they're looking for something else, we can kind of transition to see what they have. So that was great feedback for me, because yeah, when going into stores, they just don't know what they want until they hear it, and that was great feedback for me moving forward. So I have done that. I've prepped a whole bunch of magic items per class, as well as just like fun ones and silly ones that I can just grab at a moment's notice. So that was the end of session 22. And then session 23 was them leaving the store, and they wanted to go to a magical bookstore called Thick and Thin, which was kind of on the other side of town. So they had to walk down the main road through the town square and then kind of on the outskirts of town on the other side. So they started making their way, and there was a beggar drow who was asking for money. And I had planned that this could potentially be an encounter, but it would depend on the players. And he said, thank you for your wisdom. You should come and share it with us sometime. And then Olavac said, well, how about I do it now? And I was like, scrap the bookstore, scrap everything else. We're going to do a combat. So I had them be like, I had him like twitch, kind of like he was on drugs. And they tried to make insight checks to see if he was like lying. And he was sincere, like he wanted money. He's addicted to drugs. He needs money to buy things. And they kind of work for bad people. So they took him and they try to ambush the characters to try to steal, all of their magical gear and things like that. So that took the whole session. I thought it went well. I kind of homebrewed some of the spells to be a little bit more potent. Like, for example, I had one of the guys cast Cloud of Daggers, and I made it kind of like he had a sacrifice part of himself. Like he had dagger slits all down his forearms and wrists in order for the Cloud of Daggers to be, instead of a 5x5, it was 10x10. So bigger in size. And so that was one way I changed it. I also gave them spells, and I made them a little bit more tactful, like hiding and getting high ground and things like that. I've been very inspired by watching Baldur's Gate 3 as far as like tactics, because I haven't really given any enemies tactics thus far. So this was kind of the first one. So all of the players went down except for Waldo and Wink, I believe. Maybe Olavac didn't go down, but all of them did. So that's kind of what I was wanting. I was wanting a fight where they went down. The only problem was it didn't feel like the fight was like earned, like, oh yeah, we like did good and we beat them and that was the end of the fight. It was just more of like just having fun and just playing D&D and rolling dice and trying to attack people and killing people and things like that. So I also spent a lot of time on the combat beforehand, like making sure they understand who it is that they see, what is the layout. There were questions throughout, but I felt like I did a good job clarifying, like, does this make sense? And so that was great. I just need to remember to always take the time to spend 5 minutes to explain everything so there's no questions, or like you're wanting to do something as a character, but then it turns out you didn't understand the battlefield as you thought you did. So basically your plan is thwarted and you feel disappointed because what you planned on doing didn't actually get to come to fruition. So that was the end of the session. As far as like we're going to play in person in about 5 sessions, and hopefully they get to the Masquerade. However, I'm not going to force anything. Since they've come to LaBelle, it's been like smooth sailing. Like everything has gone perfectly thus far. So if they want to go to stores, I am okay with playing that out. I don't want to rush anything, especially since I spent so much time on making like an inventory, and the shopkeepers all have images, and it's just really in depth and filled out. So I want them to be able to explore that and feel that. So If it goes slower than we were wanting, it does. That's just the way it happens. I might try and speed it up later on. Like, you have downtime, let's just speed through this so we can get the good stuff for when we meet. But I'll play that by ear as we go. Don't want to kind of ruin the mojo that we have thus far. But so we'll see what happens in the next sessions as they explore more of LaBelle and start to meet some of the big players and understand the full scope of what's happening and how the city is being affected by both the Chain of Orokef and Ragnar the Invincible. So we'll see you in the next one later.